Let's talk about the number 2 pick, Dylan Harper. Obviously, this is fascinating as well because of the fit, because of the team. They have taken Tim Duncan when they had David Robinson. That seems to be the prevailing narrative when it comes to this pick. They have the Rookie of the Year. They have De'Aaron Fox. Do they take Harper? Does it make sense? Or do you just take Harper and figure it out and maybe make a trade happen? Like, what does that fit look like at number 2?
We've got a notebook coming out here this week on The Ringer that is going to sort of elaborate on some of these answers beyond what I'll be able to say, hopefully concisely here about this. But Dylan, we both watched him a lot. If for people who haven't gotten to see Dylan, he measured in well. He's a 6 foot guard, 6'6" lead guard in shoes. Crazy positional size, and that's legitimate. He can get really low with the ball, 6'10" wingspan with big hands, can really pound the ball with his left hand. He's working to balance out the right hand and get to the point where he can throw live dribble passes with both. But in the paint, man, I mean, he's one of those guys that, you remember, those early years, he's bigger than Tony Parker, so this isn't a 1-to-1, but you remember Shea has some of this going on too, where there are these guys that in the half court, you just ask yourself, you'd be like, how is he always shooting a layup? It's like the paint is full. How is this guy always at? Brunson has some of this too.
Their ability to knife through traffic somehow, right? And just end up on the other side. You're like, how'd you get through that gap? Like, well, what is that? And then it works, right?
It's not necessarily shot out of a cannon where you're just flying to the baskets or slithering sort of the way that like a John Morant does, but he can slow it down, and his balance is crazy around the basket, and he's a creative finisher. He has big guy feet for a guard. But I say all that to say that for the Spurs, you're going to kind of encounter a question, I think, in terms of the short-term, long-term thing that we were talking about a minute ago with them, where, he fits the mold of a Spurs draft pick somewhere in that 6'5" to 6'8" range, +3 wingspan, long, and they kind of make bets on guys who have crazy defensive switchable tools, who, maybe the offense isn't quite at the same level, but we think it'll come along. We think we can bring it along. That's sort of the historic Spurs confidence developmentally. But he's a guy that I think you do sort of run into a spatial thing where, Jeremy Sohan, great defender, not great shooter. Stephon Castle, great defender, not great shooter. Kelton Johnson came in, he was an okay shooter, but he's never quite gotten there. If you add Dylan Harper to that, are you going to stack up too many shooters that are like hypothetical shooters? Because Wemby, as much as we love him spacing the floor, he's not out there cashing them constantly. He can hit them, but do you want to really add a guy like that to the puzzle? So I think he really has value for them, to me, in the asset sense, no matter what they choose to do. If they bring him in and they get in a situation where they're saying, we want to bet on, on maybe moving some of these guys in the short term. Maybe they move Castle or somebody else like that. He's worth keeping because he's a great building block, but I think he could be very valuable based on the way that he plays to another team should they want to make a bigger move, which is a lot of what people are talking about with this pick.
It does feel like the 1, 2, and 3, they're the most talented, obviously, they're the 1, 2, and 3 pick, but they're all going to situations where their growth could be some way stunted because of the teams that they're going to. Is there any concern like with that, with Flagg or with Harper, where like they kind of get pigeonholed in a role and we never see kind of the full arsenal of them, because they do feel like they have the tools to be franchise guys, but they're not going to franchise situations, right? So could that be concerning?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, that's the situation that Philly, that's the situation Dallas, San Antonio, all three of those teams at the top are in this position where, and you can be of two minds about this. Some people really think that, and I don't know that there's an exact answer, but if you're an aspiring lead guard, a lead handler, Dylan Harper on a bat, on a Wizards type team, shout out to Joe House, blessings up for their situation. But, ideally, Dylan Harper would just be drinking pick and roll reps through a fire hose with the Wizards right now, but he's not going to get the chance to do that. So is it better for him in the short term to be taking it on a smaller diet? It's hard to say. It's hard to say if like screwing up. I know that's a strong way to put it, but just sort of working your way through the wastefulness of figuring out how to be a primary offensive option in the NBA. I think that in terms of the shooting, the questions that he has, we didn't really mention, he's been a low 30s 3-point shooter across all levels for the past few years. Can he sort of graduate beyond that? Can he learn to get off the ball faster? Those are all kind of questions. But I think that he is probably, of the three guys, would probably have the most adjustment period to moving into a smaller role, because Flagg, I think, is ready to do that. And I think Ace Bailey is more set up to do that too, which might, throw to whatever you want to talk about next.
Yeah,